Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast this week in America. Great to have you with us on the program. Robert Gallant back with us on the show. He's drawn on his 30 years experience in technology to create the scenario for the Armageddon Virus. This is the third novel in the series featuring clandestine government team leader Travis Weld and his use of the beautiful environmental graduate student Chesney Barrett in the deadly pursuit of terrorists and drug dealers. The book is called The Armageddon Virus. He's the author of 4 other novels as well, a frequent guest on the program. Robert Gallant with us. Robert, welcome back to the program. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Rick. It's great here to be chatting with you. I thoroughly enjoy it.
It is great to have you here. You do such an excellent job with the books. The one we're talking about today is The Armageddon Virus. A really interesting book. You take a lethal virus with the potential for global devastation. Where did the idea come for this book?
I remembered having read about the Legionnaire's disease that hit a Philadelphia hotel and killed some people, and they hunted for about 2 years. What was this virus? Turned out it wasn't a virus. It was a bacteria in the water that did it. And because of that, it didn't spread at the time. But I thought, what about if this had been a virus like Ebola and it had the ability to spread, which Ebola doesn't have to a large extent yet? Wow, what would we do about that? So that became the starting point. And I went in and I studied, I spent 3 years studying up on viruses. I was fortunate. I knew 2 real good virologists that I had worked with. And so I worked their brain on tell me everything about this. So I ended up then with the storyline of, okay, here's what the virus is and so forth. And I had originally kind of conceived it as, okay, here's the characters I'm going to have. But then after working with Chesney Barrett in Satan's Stronghold and Jericho's Trumpet, I said, she is perfect for this book.
She is such a great character. Yeah, you can't let her go. You have to keep finding new scenarios for her. It's interesting you mentioned the research, because when we read your books, we're entertained and then we're thinking, but there's a level of truth through here because this could actually happen. This is a scenario that's not that far from possibly happening someday, is it?
Yes, that's absolutely true, because it used to be these strange new viruses were buried somewhere off in the jungles or in small villages. Yes. But now with world travel, they can suddenly, bam, they'll show up in a major city. And it is so difficult to trace down a virus as to what is the carrier for this virus? What makes it so deadly? And we saw this back in the 70s when a filovirus came along, which is the deadliest virus that's ever been around. And then after a while, popped another one and another one. And Ebola is a filovirus, the deadliest of the ones so far. But this is a brutal one. I mean, they've been hunting for what is the carrier for Ebola, and they still haven't been able to find it. Fortunately, it doesn't tend to spread easily. You have to have real strong contact, eat contaminated food, or get blood on you, or like that. But my thought was, wow, what about if it becomes airborne contagious, like flu, pneumonia, and these others are? There are viruses out there that are that way. All it's got to do is get together with a buddy and find out how to do it. So that became kind of the theme of my story. In fact, I started the story off with a comment by a virologist, and he says, if you could go back far enough in your genealogy, you would find that your ancestors were viruses. Never underestimate what a virus can do.
And that's the theme that's through the book. The book is the new book by Robert Gallant. It's called The Armageddon Virus. Information available, and the book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You mentioned sort of the moral questions that you get into. During the course of the book, how far a government will go to protect its citizens. The fact now with this global travel, something that could be a problem somewhere halfway around the world, could be a problem here in a very short period of time. Again, that's addressed in the book, The Armageddon Virus. Let's go back and set up the scenario. I mentioned Travis Weld is back. Chesney Barrett is back. Briefly, who is Travis? Who is Chesney? And then we'll talk a little bit about the storyline.
Yeah, Travis Weld is he's the leader of a clandestine government organization that is willing to bend the rules to go after both terrorists and drug dealers. And Chesney Barrett was a graduate student doing work in the TWIA Basin in Louisiana, doing research work, when Travis Weld originally recruited her, saying, hey, you have an excuse to be in the middle of the swamp because you're doing this research. There is a methamphetamines drug factory hidden somewhere in this vast swamp, and we don't have a way to find it. Would you be willing to go in and hunt for it? And she chose to do this because back when she was getting ready to go to the Olympics, probably as the best swimmer in the world, her car was rammed by a fleeing drug dealer that put her in the hospital for a while, and she missed her opportunity to compete in the Olympics. So even though she was fully recovered physically, she has a burning anger at, you can't let bad people do things like this. So she did that one for him. And ever since then, she said, wow, going after these bad guys is like going to the Olympics. And in this particular case, you have to finish first because first runner-up dies.
Well, yeah, and I would give her a perfect 10 on going after the bad guys because she does that so well. In the book, we're talking about the Armageddon virus. She's back, Travis. Travis is he's chasing terrorists, and he intercepts a phone call that grabs his attention because they're talking about this virus, again, a virus that could wipe out the population.
Yes, and this somebody is trying to sell it to a weapons dealer, which that means that weapons dealer is going to go sell it to terrorist organizations or rogue nations, and it can be devastating. How you find this person? And of course, Travis Weld said, Chesney, I need you to go find this. And he sets her up in a scenario where she is supposedly a reporter for a New Orleans newspaper who is doing research on a feature article on viruses. So this allows her to go and intermingle and so forth. And pretty shortly, she ends up, there is this research firm in Houston, Texas, that I think that's where the problem is. There's been mysterious deaths happening there. There is an absolutely neurotic but brilliant virologist. There's another virologist, manager who wants to put his hands all over me. And there's a couple other ones. One of these is the person that is selling this virus. But how in the world do I find them? Because the clock is running. If that virus gets set off somewhere, it's going to kill a lot of people. And also, the weapons dealer is beginning to become a little bit suspicious as to about her. So she needs to get this done and done quickly. But it is an amazing challenge. And as always, Chesney has this ability to ingratiate herself to everybody and get away with things that nobody else could get away with. And if she gets in a bad spot, Travis Weld has trained her how to fight. And as he said, those magnificent legs of yours that made you the best swimmer in the world also make you one of the deadliest fighters I've ever encountered.
And as she's in Houston trying to work her way into this community, the experts that you talk about, she doesn't know who to trust, does she? That makes things even more complicated because she's not quite sure. Everybody seems to have sort of secret agendas on their own they're working on. So she's not real sure who she can trust, who the good guys are, possible good guys, because they're all coming across as shady to some extent.
Absolutely. That's her challenge. There isn't a one she can scratch off the list. And you can't bet yourself going to somebody and saying, I need your help to find out who's selling this virus, because they might say, well, I'm the one that's selling it, and so long.
Well, yeah, and then they find out this virus, this isn't just a virus. I'm throwing that around out there like it's a common ordinary virus. This virus really has the possibility of having serious consequences to humankind.
Yes, it has teamed up the ability to be as deadly as an Ebola, but also spreadable like a flu. So you put that combination together and you say, well, and it'll kill millions in one series of infections. So...
Well, yeah, and in the hands of terrorists, and again, that's one of the areas in the book. The book is the Armageddon Virus, where you're like, wow, this is a little scary. They don't need like a lot of weapons. They don't even need like a big army. They have a virus like this, and they can do away with a lot of people. It's a little frightening, the possible scenario.
Yes, it is. In fact, that was one that one of the ones book reviewers that reviewed my book brought out this exact point. The Pacific Book Review said the fictional work will push the way readers think about the world we live in and how science and technology interact with new forms of global terrorism. What if the scenarios set up in the book did happen? This book would be perfect for discussing in a book club. But it'd make them all nervous.
Well, it would, because like I say, you're reading the book and you're entertained and like, wow, I love this scenario. Then you start thinking, could this actually happen? So suddenly you've got a whole new line of communication. Robert Gallant, our guest in the program, the new book, this is the third in the series featuring Travis Weld and Chesney Barrett. It's called The Armageddon Virus. It's available all across the country, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. One of the reviews says you really know how to deliver a mystery, and you do. Talk about that, and I'm almost going to make that plural, mysteries. How do you go about doing that and juggling everything going on? If you're going to read Robert's book and think, okay, this is going to be a simple one plot all the way through, every other page you've got, okay, I better pay attention here because something else is coming at me. How do you develop it and follow through with all of the different mysteries that you have going?
I love that aspect of putting together a story. I mean, I want it to not only be thrilling, exciting, when I get through, I'm kind of out of breath. But I also want them to have said, wow, I learned about viruses, things that I didn't even know, and about science or about particular areas of the country or activities. So I really like that. I had the fortune that when I was in technology, I wrote a lot of over 50 articles in scientific journals. I wrote 3 books on technology. And the reason I was so prolific was I had this ability to take a very difficult technology and explain it in a way that a person could say, I understand it now and I know how to use it. So I put that to good use in the Armageddon Virus. In fact, I was real pleased because the U.S. Review of Books made the comment, Author Gallant has crafted a thriller that is as compelling intellectually as it is hormonally. His knowledge of technology helps meld computer science, biology, and medicine into a frighteningly plausible nightmare of a virus so deadly it could literally wipe out millions of people. Technical jargon that threatens to make one's eyes glaze over is translated into understandable analogies adeptly. The pace of the novel is swift and sure, and the final conflict is as exciting as it is satisfying.
Plausible, the word plausible really jumps out there. And I even go back to thinking somebody could rob the Vatican. That's a book that we've talked about before that's available. And if you go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you'll see that book as well. All of the books have this air of plausibility about them. One of the reviews as well, and then I would like you to read a segment in there on Chesney that really sort of sums up this attitude that she has, and she's going to get the bad guy no matter what. Talking about that you in the narrative, you serve up several goodies, and that's another trademark that you do in your writing. It's not just a plot and you follow it along. You've got a number of balls in the air at the same time, don't you? As a juggler, you've got like a number of things that you're juggling
that are taking place that you kind of say, well, that's kind of interesting, and then suddenly, oh wow, that turns out to be pretty critical in this.
Yes.
Whoa, that's a problem. So I love doing that. To me, that's part of the excitement.
I mentioned the 30 years background in technology, and we've talked about this before, but as you were writing for a technology-oriented publication, you had this ability to take these complex issues and break them down so people could understand them. Is that one of the keys, you think, for the success and the enjoyable factor that people have with the books? The fact that you're able to give them a little bit of science. It's not just the usual, chase scene type of thing. Yet we understand it. You're talking about the Armageddon virus, a virus that's so powerful it could wipe out most of the world population, and yet we understand that.
Yes, and I think I want the reader to be able to walk along beside the character and see and sense what they're dealing with, so that they're saying, yeah, I understand why they're real worried about that. I really can understand why. Or, hey, I understand why this may be the clue that they've got to have that will solve it. So it is, to me, it's really exciting to write a novel. Sometimes I end up spending 5 passes trying to get the final 20 pages where I say, this is what the reader, when they're done, they'll say, yes, that's the way I wanted it to end.
Well, you take us to that point in all of your books. The book we're talking about specifically now, Robert Gallant's The Armageddon Virus. A few minutes left in the program, and I saved this so you could give us a reading from the book. We're talking about Chesney and what her ability to take a hopeless situation and really put the pressure on the bad guy. This sort of sums up her personality. This is a really interesting, fascinating, jump-off-the-page character. Pick up with this section that I think will give us some good background as to who she is.
Chesney scanned the information, clenched her fist, and yanked out the disk. She now knew who the virus seller was. It was time to get out of the laboratory and go grab the virus before he could take it to the weapons dealer. She turned to pick up her purse from the desk. He was standing there. You should have stuck with writing newspaper articles rather than sticking your nose into something that was none of your business. Chesney noted his Colt 38 Special, ample firepower to put 2 bullets in her before she could reach her gun sitting inside her open purse. She nonchalantly sat down on the top of the desk, her long legs exposed almost to the top of her thighs. That put her hand closer to the purse. Then let's talk business. You agreed to sell the virus culture to a weapons dealer for $1 to $2 million. The dealer is selling the virus to the buyer for a lot more money than he's paying you. He moved a step closer, his forehead furrowed. How do you know that? I'm not a journalist, she replied. I work for the buyer. My job was to find the virus seller and purchase it for significantly less than $12 million that the weapons dealer wanted. Toss in with me, and we can walk away with $7 million. He began breathing heavier. I get $2 million for the virus. Why should I trust you? She smiled and leaned back a little more, spreading her legs apart. Now her hand rested beside the purse. Because I'm the only one that can keep you alive. Your weapons dealer never leaves loose strings dangling. He's already killed 3 people to clear your path. As soon as you deliver the virus, he will kill you. Even if you manage somehow to avoid him, I've already told my boss that I think you are the seller, and when I confirm it tonight, I would offer you a split of $7 million. When that doesn't happen, my boss will come hunting for the man who not only cost him $5 million, but killed his daughter. There is no way you can survive without me. His breathing escalated and his left hand rubbed sweat from his forehead. She said, you own the gun, so it's your choice. Either bet you can survive both groups, or if you toss in with me, next week you and I will be in the Mediterranean on the sailing boat of our dreams, snuggling up together. Just you and me and $7 million. Now, if you're this bad guy, suddenly the whole game has changed for you. I mean,
changed dramatically. I see a movie. I see an audiobook in the future. That was really enjoyable. Such great dialogue between the 2 characters. Chesney Barrett is back. You can read all about her latest escapade in the Armageddon Virus. A fascinating book. The book's available at Barnes & Noble, at Amazon. You can link on directly to those websites by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Robert, it is always a pleasure. Once again, an excellent book. The book, as you're reading it and as you're giving us the audio version there, it just jumps off the page. It's a great story. It's always fun to have you on the program. This has been great. The time's gone by way too quickly.
Great. Well, Rick, I'll tell you, it's a pleasure to get to talk it with you. You do an outstanding job of understanding how to bring about, here's what the story is about, and this is why you ought to want to read it.
It's an excellent book. Once again, it's called The Armageddon Virus. It's available Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Robert, as I mentioned, always a pleasure. Great to have you with us. We look forward to having you back on the program. Thank you, sir, for being with us again.
Thank you very much, Rick.
You're welcome. You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Back after these messages.